Hello everyone, welcome to the Taiwan Climate Partnership Digital Cross Green. And our forum will focus on the topic about what is digital, what is green, how they can combine together. And today we have two very important guests. One is from the European Union. He's Luis Neves. Luis, how are you?
I'm good, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
And one is my good friend. Right now his new books is here. And Colley Hwang. Hello.
Thank you, Dr. Peng, and our audiences.
Yeah, it's a new book. It's very popular in Taiwan now and also all over the world. Will we have an English version in the future?
Yeah, coming to.
Okay, yeah. Okay, wonderful. This book is very important. If you live in Taiwan, you want to buy anything or in some kind of investment, you should read this in advance.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And we will talk something about the digital and the green. And you know, everybody knows that, but the detail, how they can combine together, is a little complicated. So our first speaker is Luis, and Luis is from Germany, right? From Germany.
I'm Portuguese, but living in Germany.
Living in Germany, okay. Actually, we meet each other in COP28, right?
Dubai, yes.
Yeah. We invite him to come to our pavilion to talk something. And he have two roles. One is GeSI, one is EGDC. Can you explain something about these two organizations to us?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a great pleasure being here with Colley as well. And well, GeSI is a business industry association like TCA, like TIMA or others that exist here in Taiwan. We exist for over 22 years, and we were created at the UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Programme, as an industry initiative. A group of telecommunications companies created GeSI, and the main theme or the main thematic area or the main concern at the time, it was the energy consumption of telecommunications infrastructure. So a very strong focus on environment. And then at the time I was the Chief Sustainability Officer of Deutsche Telekom in Germany. And I was elected chairman of GeSI, and I decided to move GeSI to Brussels, to establish it in Brussels as a business industry association. And then we start growing and enlarging our scope of work. But coming to your question, we are a business-driven industry association with member companies that support the organization. We have an elected board that drives the strategic direction of the organization. And in that connection, because we have been working on the intersection between technology and sustainable development, and this is our core business, if I may call it so. We have developed many research, we work in many programs, we develop tools for the members, and we became very recognized and credible organization, and that's why the European Commission invited us to be the secretariat of EGDC. So EGDC is different from GeSI. EGDC is an initiative from the European Commission that wants to develop a methodology to measure the net positive impact of digital solutions, and they asked us to be the secretariat and the driving force of that process. And so we have been developing that methodology for the last 2 years, and is now ready to go. And this is the main difference between GeSI and the EGDC.
Okay, wonderful. So the EGDC was supported by the European Union. You have a DG Connect and also DigiClima.
Exactly.
These two organizations support this organization.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. And I know their members, the requirement is net zero before 2040, not 50, it's 2040.
2040. So the EGDC, to be for a company to be part of EGDC, they need to make commitments. And the European Commission requested that the CEOs of the companies that want to become members, they have to sign 3 commitments. One, it's about net zero 2040, have a science-based target approved, and also to commit to deploy innovative solutions for climate. And then of course they had to commit to develop the methodology, to provide data, because for us to do a methodology we needed case studies and solutions from the companies to understand whether those solutions were green or not. So we developed those criteria. I tell you one thing, we got 100 solutions from the companies. Only 2 were accepted to be a part of the process. So that means the other 98, they didn't pass the threshold that we established to define a green solution at the very beginning. But anyway, so this was the commitment of the companies, and we have now 37 companies on board and partners, but we'll talk about it later on.
Okay, wonderful. So later on we will talk in more detail about the EGDC. And our another speaker is Colley Hwang, and everybody know him write a book, but he's not only the writer, but also a founder and also president of the DIGITIMES. Because some people, if they would just watch the TV, they did not know the ICT industry, they will not know you. But actually, in our field, you are just like a kingdom. Can you talk something about what is DIGITIMES? You have a papers,
yes.
You have a website,
yes.
And you are international, globally business, right?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ben. Thank you for your invitation. It's my great honor, and please allow me to introduce myself at first. I came back to Taiwan in 1985. That year was a very important year for Taiwan because there was the first year for personal computer industry, especially in Taiwan, because Microsoft launched Windows, because Intel has a new CPU, then we had a platform to produce so-called IBM compatible PCs. Then Taiwan became a kingdom of the computer, and lately we have the semiconductor industry as well. And the year when I came back to Taiwan, government recruited 20 young men to formulate strategy for the country. I'm one of them. Actually, I was the youngest.
How old are you during that time?
27 years old.
27 years old.
Yes.
They choose 20 young men together.
Yes.
You are the youngest.
I'm youngest.
Okay.
And actually this morning I had a breakfast with my first boss. He was 31 years old at that time. But we formulated strategy for the country. Like we wrote the first version of Taiwan's computer industry development plan. Then next year I was assigned to Hsinchu Science Park to plan for the science park about the industry structure and the strategy as well. So from that year on to today, we have 38 years experience about high tech. And we started from scratch. Then Taiwan has experienced how people can leverage the high tech industry to develop economy, to develop industry as well. So as I say, I'm one of the witnesses. And personally, I'm acquainted with most of the industry leaders. So that's why 26 years ago, I was invited by Stan Shi, founder of Acer Group. He asked me to start up my own business. Then today, DIGITIMES, as you mentioned, we have international business. And I'm not sure, but we could be, the most profitable media in Taiwan. And we run global business as well. We publish 90 articles or news every day. We also publish 300 reports yearly. And then we pick about 30 to 35 articles of news into English. Because Taiwan running global business, not only in Taiwan. And I think Luis may interested in about how much Taiwan consume energy, or how we face the new challenge from ESG issues or topics. And I'm not sure if Luis knew that. TSMC is the biggest company, people knew that. But, this company has more than 50% gross margin, more than 40% net profit after tax. They are very successful. And the last year, their revenue close to $70 billion. But people didn't know. They also consumed about 8% of the Taiwan energy, Taiwan electricity. But yes,
and water.
And water, yes. They're the biggest one. But take different way to think about that. If the efficiency cannot run as Taiwan today, we build a new factory in particular your country or in Scandinavian countries, could be better? No, we have the best efficiency. Then we run the business successfully. So today we need to think about the new geopolitical issues like decentralized manufacturing. So how Taiwan can help other countries to save their energy, to build a new factory. And Taiwan has the best experience. And personally, I agree our President Tsai, he mentioned about Taiwan can help. And what means for help? Then we need to think about, over past 3 decades, all of the industry developed by top-down approach, because we need to follow the rule or spec by Apple, HP, Dell. But today we have more applications, application-driven opportunities from India, from China, from other countries. How we can help them to build their own system and then run by themselves. And Taiwan experience is a very rare and a very real one as well. So how we can help them, there is an issue we can discuss. Secondly, I also like to ask help from Luis. Because I'm a witness of the industry longer than close to 48 years already. In the beginning stage, I deeply understand why Scandinavian countries bought most PCs. Do you know why? Because their tax loading rate is highest in the world. Just example, if you met $100, you need to pay $50 for tax. But Scandinavian countries like Norway, like Denmark, like those countries, they always encourage the citizens to buy computer, to learn new technology. And they buy from Taiwan, they can deduct 50% tax. So today, once we go, Scandinavian countries, doesn't matter Norway, Denmark, or Iceland, they always provide services without people. Then we can save our energy. It's a long-term consideration. So we learn a lot of things from them. So Norway is a country, has a very abundant oil resources, but they have the 82% green cars percentage-wise. When they buy young men to buy cars, they buy electricity cars, something like that. So how we learn from European countries to take a longer way, to think about the climate change, to think about the ESG. And thirdly, Taiwan is a country, as I mentioned, we're small, and there is a big burden for us because, maybe Luis, we didn't know, 95% of our citizens live in western coast of Taiwan. So highest population density in the world. Our burden about climate, environment, we are highest in the world. So I'm not asking or encourage people invest a huge money and resources to build a high-tech industry here. So I believe one thing, top-down, bottom-up, to do together, and we optimize our resources, then can help people, help the planet, has a better environment. That's why I think thinking today.
Can I bring a dimension to
Yes,
that?
yes. It's okay.
You can ask me a question, but I'd like to bring a... So, about something that you said, the example of Norway and Denmark and Sweden. So, we have done an investigation in GeSI a couple of years ago. I think it was 2017. So, we put together a database with 17 digital indicators.
Yes.
So, we're talking about connectivity, 2G, 3G, 4G, IoT, price of communications, so affordability, and we call this project the Digital Access Index. So it covers 158 countries around the world. It's a huge database, and we with the use of Microsoft technology called Power BI, you can display the results of the database and you can show the results. And so we did a correlation between those 17 digital indicators with the development state of the countries. And what you can see is that the countries that are most developed in the world with better living standard are those that invested in digital. And so you see on top, the Sweden, the Luxembourgs, the Germanys, and so on and so on. And you see those countries that are really poor in technology, lagging behind. And so coming to your point that you just to stress that aspect. The other comment I would like to say is that another investigation that we did in 2007 and coming to the climate conversation was in 2007 our industry was under fire, if I may say so, because Gartner, the industry analyst, came up with a number saying the the ICT industry is responsible for 2% of the global emissions, equivalent to aviation. And then at GeSI we said, this cannot be. So, and then we decided to run an investigation. So we hired McKinsey to do a research for us, and we asked McKinsey 3 questions. One, what is our global footprint? The second one, what is our enabling impact? Because our technology enable others to become more efficient. And what is the business value? If there is a business value. And then we had an independent body to verify the results, the Climate Group in London. So GeSI was only in GeSI companies. We were providing the data to McKinsey. And so the result was the following. So McKinsey confirmed the 2% of the global emissions. But our enabling impact, it was 5 times bigger. So, and then there was a huge business value around the enabling capacity. And we were only talking about energy consumption reduction. We're not even, considering the other aspects of digital technologies to provide better lives for people. If you have connectivity, you can do a lot with connectivity. You can provide better education, better health services, better mobility, and so on and so on. At that time, we have not analyzed that. But just to show, and coming to our point, that digital is fundamental also to tackle climate change and to respond to climate change. But I have a couple of figures about that later on if we come to that point.
May I respond?
Yeah.
You mentioned about Gartner Group and McKinsey. They are good. They are world-class and outstanding performance over the past decades. But take different way to think about the so-called high-tech. From Western society, they have the different perspective about the industry. Just example. American-based consulting company, normally they focus on industry outlook, tech giants, market trends, or technology mega trends, something like that. They are good. So we can identify the different stage about high-tech industry development. In the beginning stage, we say PC stage, then internet.com, then mobile stage, and the big data. Today is AI stage. So they are different. And I know you have telecom company background, and think about in the beginning. So .com age, who are the real winners? Maybe Nokia, Ericsson. Then back into mobile stage, Apple and China. Third stage will be big data. Who gets a better return, best return? They are Amazon Web Service, Google, something like that, Microsoft. Yeah. Then today, NVIDIA. So there is a change. But take different way to think about, you mentioned about the energy consumption, especially Asian supply chain. As I mentioned, most of the tablet PCs, notebook PCs, semiconductor produced by Asian countries. There's a different perspective. So you cannot ask the company like McKinsey, Gartner Group, ask them to study supply chain. There is a different angle, or totally different. Just example, last year, the worldwide semiconductor market, according to the data from Gartner Group, $534 billion. There is a data about market opportunities. But take different way to think about semiconductor perspective. We need to think about IDM. You know IDM, right? Fabless, foundry, OST, EDA tool, equipment, materials. If we combine together, the industry close to 1 trillion already. There is a totally different perspective. So they consume less. From market perspective, they consume more because industry manufacturing process they need. So they need water, they need electricity. And today, just last week, Indian government announced they are going to build 3 factories for semiconductor, and they will cooperate with Taiwan. And I agree with them because year 2035, you can imagine that today China and India all have 1.4 billion population, but in year 2035, China will less 380 million under 40 years old. So we need to think about the future required. We be from India, Pakistan, how we help them to consume less energy, and there is the Asian perspective, not from American, from Western society. We are different. So we need to think about that kind of things.
Yeah. Probably later on we will talk in detail about how can we move on the Asia way about the net zero. Yeah. Okay, my first question will be to Luis. Actually, European Union is the first continental announced that you have a Green Deal. And later on, I remember Green Deal is about 4 years ago by the European Union, von der Leyen, and she's also from German. She's a Minister of Defense, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and a very charming lady by my point of view, because I met her during the COP for several times. And she announced the Green Deal. Later on, Fit for 55. That's for the 2030 for cut down the emission 50%. And also later on, Repower EU, because the energy problem, because of Ukraine and Russia war, and also recently, in this year, you announced the European Union Net Zero Industry Act. So my question is, this rule, this structure is very clear from the top down. And what's the impact to the technology industry? Because we focus on the technology industry. What's the impact or any kind of industry influence for the industry?
Well, let's say, of course, there will be an impact because, you know, all this legislation is designed for the companies to walk, what I call walk the talk. So they need to address the challenge of climate change. But I see it from an ICT perspective. I see it as a great opportunity because it links to what GeSI has been, let's say, showing for a couple of years now. What is happening is that the more you deploy technology, the more efficient things come. So with digital technologies, you generate a lot of efficiencies. It's true that if you deploy more technology, if you have more data, if you build more data centers and so on, the energy consumption is growing because you are providing more services, you have more people connected and so on. But there is a component of efficiency on the other side that we have identified, which is huge. And that gives a huge contribution to climate change. And so the European Commission somehow realized the potential of investing in this green transition or twin transition, whereby bringing digital together with the green was an opportunity. Of course, it generates you know, a lot of stress because companies were not prepared for that. Many companies are not ready for that transition, and they need to adapt their processes internally, and you know how the private sector reacts. So normally, you know, the private sector they operate in a kind of business as usual mode, and all these legislations will bring some level of disruption, both to the European market, but also from outside Europe. So anyone that has a relationship with Europe, of course, will be touched upon by all this legislation, and they need to make an effort to adapt to that. But I see it not. So at the very beginning, it looks very much as a burden, as a problem. I see it actually as a huge opportunity because companies and business, they will have to improve their processes, internal processes. On the other side, being a technology company, the opportunity is great. So in our, we've been doing a lot of research about deployment of digital technologies. What does that mean from a climate perspective and from a business perspective? And the conclusion is, in the latest research, which is our Digital with Purpose report from 2019, where we spent 7 months with a global team of Deloitte. We had more than 200 people working with us globally, and from Deloitte and from GeSI. We were looking at the relation between digital technologies, 7 disruptive technologies like AI, blockchain, IoT, and all those, virtual reality, and so on. We correlated that with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets. And what we saw is that those technologies will make a huge positive impact in terms of sustainable development. So 45% of impact in the 17 SDGs. And the business value was calculated at the order of the trillions of euros. So legislation sometimes looks bad and represents a burden, but if you look at this twin transition, I see it actually as a great opportunity for our industry. It will bring lots of value, better living standards for people, and of course, the reason why Europe has done this, well, we are all confronted with the climate change, and so this is a global problem. And Europe has a huge responsibility because, Europe was one of the biggest polluters as well. And so it needs to take that burden and that responsibility and needs to contribute to bring down the global climate emissions as its own responsibility. But overall, I would say I see a great opportunity of any country in adopting a similar strategy. Green and digital will be the driving force of sustainable development in the future.
Yeah, that's why, for example, 2 years ago, I just read a report about climate technology. Climate technology, there was some definition about that. The Silicon Valley Bank, they have a report. And the European Union cover about 1/3 of the investment. The 1 year, I remember in the 2 years ago, is the biggest investment. About yearly is about more than 100 billion US dollars. And Europe cover about 1/3. So that means it's just very second to the United States. United States, you're the number one. Second is the European Union. And then the other is very, very small about climate technology. That's why you mentioned the European Union, most of their technology company, ICT company, they will have some investment, not a burden, it's an opportunity to do, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I think it's a great opportunity. So, and actually, if you look from a geopolitical perspective, what you see two big technological blocks, the United States and Asia, and China, and of course Taiwan is part of that. The European Union is somehow lacking behind. So Europe needs to find its own space. And I think this green transition, it will create a new environment that will be dynamic. It will create new opportunities. It will drive innovation in many sectors, in many areas. And for Europe, it will reposition Europe as an important leader in this geopolitical complexity that we are living today. I think without Europe, without this balance, we will probably end up in a worse stage. So we need this approach. It will be fruitful for everybody at the end of the day.
Okay, wonderful. So my question will to the colleague, because this book, I think, is a wonderful book in the recent years, especially TSMC.
Thank you.
Growing very quickly. And however, in your books, not only talk about TSMC, but also Korea, India, Europe, US, some 8 leaders about the semiconductor industries. And probably I will ask you the conclusion. Which is the most opportunity you think? Which country, which company will lead the semiconductor industry in the future?
Philosophy, I need to say we can help other countries to develop high-tech industry and even semiconductor to help them to build their own facility. But optimize, we need to think about where will be the best place. There is efficient conception. But take different way to think about to answer your question. And Luis mentioned about the wars in Europe, and we know we are facing the challenges like Ukraine and the Russian war. And Dr. Pan, may I ask you, if we fly from Taipei to London, how many hours?
14.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now it's not 14. Right?
16.
16. We have to avoid Siberia. So 2 hours more.
Yeah.
So there is war. And Taiwan taking a very special position. Maybe you didn't know. More than 48% of the transportation by sea goes through 2 sides of Taiwan Island. And Japan, food satisfaction rate less than 20%. And if they want to buy food, they need to go through Taiwan. Not only Japan, but also Korea. Secondly, you mentioned about semiconductor industry competition in the future. And speak frankly, now most of the advanced chips produced by Taiwanese makers, but most of the advanced memory ICs also produced by Korea. If the Eastern China Sea, West Pacific war happens, and we need to avoid that, how we can justify our concern about climate change. And maybe you didn't know, the top 5 cross-country air cargo airports all located in Western Pacific. Do you know that? The biggest airport will be Hong Kong. Second one is Incheon, Korea. Third one, Shanghai Pudong. Fourth one is Taoyuan, Taiwan. And fifth one is Narita, Japan. So all of the top 5 airports, air cargo airports, all located in Western Pacific. If the war happens, how we can do it? There is a big challenge for everyone. So American scholars, they say at least $3 trillion US dollars suffer. I say at least 10 trillion and longer than 10 years. And then today we discuss some minor things about climate change, right? Compared with this one. So we need to keep the world peaceful. The planet, we treat each other well. And I personally, if you ask me, the 8 countries, who will be the candidates to be the critical competitor or rival in this kind of business? Absolutely, America will still lead. Today it looks like Taiwan is big, but actually most of the customers from America, TSMC, more than 50-60% of the customers from like NVIDIA, Apple, only these 2 companies, they contribute 36% of the TSMC revenue. The top 9 companies, they have more than 90%. So there is a big challenge for. So if Taiwan cannot sustain to keep the manufacturing smoothly, then people will suffer. And this is one thing. Secondly, absolutely, I mentioned about US and Taiwan and Korea are very competitive in memory IC. So I mentioned that. First island chain during Cold War stage, first island chain was important. Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Philippines. But now still, Japan, Taiwan, Korea are still very important because silicon, all produced here. And can you move it out within 10 years? It's impossible. And you know, Taiwan is a small country, you knew that. There is a reason why most of the semiconductor factories in Taiwan are small and compact ones. We even built underground pipeline for the gas protection, for the oil or some special materials. So we have the best environment to produce it, but we also taken the responsibility for worldwide needs. There is a responsibility of Taiwan, but as I mentioned, we can go Europe to help Germany or other countries to build their own semiconductor industry. Then I believe Europe and Japan will be the next candidates because, you know, 40, 50 years ago, when Europe, Japan, and America to start up their own semiconductor industry, they build the industry with a whole vertical system, vertical integration. They are not only to design, to produce semiconductors, they also build equipment and the materials industry as well by themselves. So even Korea and Taiwan, we are not strong in materials and equipment. So I believe Germany or Europe or Japan will be the key players. Then China and India will be the next decades, next candidate to become a critical player. But the question is, who will be the number 8? And I choose some candidates because energy consideration. So think about Canada, Australia. So 2 months ago, I went to Australia and I met the vice president of Sydney University. He is an expert, like silicon. And he asked me questions. Is it possible Australia to become a critical player for semiconductors? Do you agree? Or you suppose them? It depends. But I say, take different way to think about Australia opportunities. So you may didn't know, 3 to 4% of the Australia GDP all contributed by education industry. They have 440,000 students in the university. So there is a big country about education. And Vietnam and Malaysia, young men, they prefer to go Australia than to go Europe or America because cheaper education fee or other issues. But they all speak English. So there is a good place to train, to educate young talents to learn semiconductor. And I suggest him, you can come to Taiwan to invite professors to teach them. Secondly, you can discuss with TSMC, UMC, or MediaTek to sign an agreement every year to come here to invite 1,000 or 5,000 young talents to come to Taiwan, or to go back to their country like India or like our other countries to build semiconductor business by themselves. So your job is to build infrastructure for talent. Otherwise, it's impossible for us. You know, last year, MediaTek chairman, Dr. Chai, Mr. Chai, he invited me to write yearbook of ICT design book for him. And, you know, we predict year 2023 to year 2030, within 7 years, even Taiwan only keep 6% compound growth rate. And we need 34,000 ICT designers more. But it's impossible for Taiwan. Mm-hmm. Every year we only have 10,000. Mm-hmm. And the TSMC also wants talents. Mm. So talent is another issue we need to consider. So to help other countries, to help the world, to help the world with a better conditions to build the industry more efficient. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking today. So it doesn't matter who are the top 8, but open our door, open our opportunities for everyone, because semiconductor will be the future.
Okay, Luis, when we meet in COP28, and I remember 39, so you mentioned before it's 37 of your members promised net zero 2040. But just we know that all the world is about 2050. But you are 10 years, 10 years more than that. So, and I remember one of our members, the Taipei Computer Association, the chairman, Paul Peng Shuanglang, and he's also president of AUO, the display panel company. And he found that and he told me, oh, we are 10 years behind. So it's a big surprise for him. And when he come back, he wrote a letter to all of his colleagues. Oh, we should keep on the track, keep moving faster than before. So I'm wondering, what's the situation 2040? Because right now it's 2024. Just very close. 2040 is very close. It's a policy or slogan to do. What's the real things?
No, the real thing is the following. We need to understand that we are facing a major challenge, and Colley already spoke about it. So climate change is not something that we can play around. You know, this is a huge thing that we need to deal with. And from an ICT perspective, we are very good to say that we are great companies. You know, you talk about the ICT, and in GeSI we have been promoting the role of ICT for good, and and I do believe that sustainability and ICT will be cross-cutting areas that will go with us the next 20, 30 years or more, because the economy is being digitized or digitalized, and sustainability is in our daily lives. And that's the reason why also GeSI transformed itself from the traditional telecommunications company now to an organization where we have all the vertical industries. So we now have water companies, energy, banks, anyone, because all those companies depend on digital. And sustainability is the challenge that we have ahead of us. So from an ICT perspective, from a digital perspective, the telecommunications companies or the digital companies, they need to move much faster, and they can move much faster. In some cases, that is not possible because you don't have the conditions, because you do not have access to green energy. You can, generate efficiencies, but those efficiencies are not enough. So you need to complement with buying renewables and so on. But in many cases, that is possible. And what we have seen, we have done a report recently with the ITU, where we scoped around 150 companies in the digital sector, and we saw that almost all of them already have targets before 2050. And so when we built the European Green Digital Coalition, we came to the conclusion that we needed to set the target below the 2050 to give an example to the other industry sectors, also to show that we need to speed up and we need to face the challenge that we are facing. And therefore, one of the main commitments to be EGDC member is to be net zero by 2040, to have an SBTI. So, and the SBTI is the process that will allows you to walk the talk, to show how are you going to implement that strategy to be net zero. But I think the benefit of this is that if you walk the talk, there will be more openness from the policymakers to deploy and to allow for more ICT deployment. So I think it's a good decision. It's a bold step, but it's also a step that, by the way, will impact the overall supply chain, because 80% of the carbon emissions of a telecommunications operator, they are from the supply chain, what we call the Scope 3 emissions. And so what are the companies now doing? They are putting specific rules on the supply chain, and they are asking the suppliers, tell me, what are you doing? So what is happening in Europe, again, it will impact the supply chain and companies here in Taiwan and in many other parts of the world. And that will speed up also the process over here. It will create challenges, but will require the companies to adapt to that change. Mm-hmm. And that's where GeSI, I think we play a very important role here, because we have been looking at technology as an opportunity, always. We understand, and I used to say, we never had so many challenges as we have today. So if you look from a sustainability perspective, when I came to China my first time in my life in 2004, doing the first audit to a Chinese company, the problem was about child labor, about social impacts. Now, 20 years later, what we are seeing is that we have supply chain impacts, they continue, but we have circular economy impacts, we have climate impacts, we have privacy impacts, because privacy with AI is becoming a huge issue. And then we have social inclusion as well, because as we deploy more technology, we also see that we have a gap between those that have access and those that we do not have. We have around 2.8 billion people in the world without access to connectivity. So it's a huge business potential at the same time that we are not harnessing. So we have been seeing the problems increasing on one side, but the opportunity component is even much bigger. So we have a huge opportunity, but to harness the opportunity, we need to walk the talk. And that's why in GeSI, we developed the Digital with Purpose report. Mm-hmm. We said, okay, if we want to walk the talk, we need to be purpose-driven. Mm-hmm. We need to embed sustainability in our core business. Mm-hmm. We need to walk the talk by addressing the challenges, mm-hmm. and we need to better sell our innovations, mm-hmm. to impact the other sectors, to bring them more efficiencies and more market opportunities. Mm-hmm. And this is the way that we have been working. And the EGDC, so this EGDC concept, as we are driving it, at the end of the day, EGDC is a group of companies, but the companies are working together, mm-hmm. to put in place the methodology, mm-hmm. and the standard that will allow us to define what is a green technology and what is the positive impact, mm-hmm. of a given technology. Mm-hmm. So we will be measuring in the future whatever solution you have in the market, in whatever vertical industry, we will, with this standard, we will be in a position to measure the impact and to better sell and communicate the benefits of digital.
Yeah, so GeSI and EGDC, you do not do anything about greenwashing for the company. No. So this is very important.
That's very important. So greenwashing is a no-go.
Yeah.
And by the way, in Digital with Purpose, we have another thing, because we design Digital with Purpose, the metrics that we design to measure company performance, mm-hmm. what you call ESG. Mm-hmm. ESG is very much related with reporting. So you talk about ESG, mm-hmm. from a reporting perspective, which is, mm-hmm. important. But in GeSI, we develop the metrics from a competitive perspective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have a certification model with 4 levels, mm-hmm. and the companies can benchmark each other. So, mm-hmm. if you take, let's take 2 examples here in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. You have Taiwan Mobile and we have Far EasTone or Zhonghua. Mm-hmm. So if all of them, they would fill in the metrics, they could see where they are, mm-hmm. and year over year, they could see what kind of progress they could make. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what we have in our system, in our methodology, mm-hmm. is that no company can stay in the same level of certification more than 3 years. So we have 4 levels. They have to progress every 3 years. If they do not progress, we don't want them. So we develop something as a tool for the company. This is not to make money. This is a ESG framework, which is aimed at, let's say, providing the companies with a tool for them to improve their sustainability performance and to generate efficiencies in what we call the problem side of the equation, but also to harness the opportunities of selling the innovations to the other industry sectors on the other side.
Okay, wonderful. So, Colley, I have a question to you because in this book, you make a very clear description about the successful of the TSMC. Why? Because everybody see just they earn lots of money, but actually, your books, you have a very detailed description about the TSMC, also their competitor, and something very interesting. But you know, in Taiwan, also in the global ESG fund market, TSMC cover about more than 50 to 60%, because TSMC not only AI, but also ESG. And however, in Taiwan, it's a burden for the TSMC because they have a huge emission. And actually, because our energy is from the traditional fossil fuel, renewable energy is just in the very early stage. And you know very well about the ICT industry. What do you think what they do about the climate change, net zero issues? Is because of pressure or by personal intention or something? What's your opinion about this?
Okay, absolutely. Change is always a pressure for a winner.
Okay.
Because we are a winner in the semiconductor industry, so we feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because we need to invest more to reduce the risk of ESG issues. But firstly, most of the people in Taiwan, they talk about the ESG, they only talk about the emission. They don't talk too much about the S and G. So there is a challenge for us to think about that. That's one thing. Secondly, why TSMC success? And because we have 3 angles to understand the competitiveness of TSMC. First one, their capacity and technology-wise, they are the best in the world. Secondly, TSMC has close to 500 critical customers, and every customer needs to deal about 2 years. So it's not easy to change the structure or to compete with them. Thirdly, TSMC invest in the past 3 years or even this year, no less than $30 billion for CapEx. $30 billion. So which means they need to deal with the suppliers like SML, like Prime Materials or other companies. So TSMC now, they build the best infrastructure for that kind of things. I just asked you a question. If TSMC or other company want to build a same facility in Mexico, in India, or in China, they could be better than Taiwan. We do it in Taiwan. It's impossible. So we need to optimize which products could suitable for which country. You introduced Paul Peng, Chairman Peng. He is my good friend.
Yeah. We
are very good friends. And once he told me an experience about the LCD panel. Then once I got the opportunity to pay visit to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, Singapore government, I went to his house, had dinner with him. I was invited to have dinner with him, and he asked me the first question is it possible Singapore to produce LCD panels? And Luis, do you know that? Every 17-inch LCD panel at that time, they consume about half ton of waters.
Yes.
So if Singapore, I talk to Prime Minister, I say, you have water deal with Malaysia. You need to import water from Malaysia, and then you run LCD panel. Is a good choice or not? Secondly, every industry, if your industry didn't have the vertical integration value, then it's not available for you to think about the industry by yourselves. Singapore is a very good place to provide high-end, very good quality service in the world. People accept it and admire them. So, yes, organizations that like your organization, GeSI, or others, you build a framework for us. And I believe you will do it fairly. But take different way to think about that. If you didn't know the supply side, originally, what we need to think about the burden or cost, and you do everything same way, then we get big trouble because we have to invest more. Then we got a challenge like green inflation. Now we need to invest more. And speak frankly, I study global GDP for many years. You know, in year 1950 to 1980, the 30 years, the total GDP worldwide increased $7 trillion. In the second 30 years, from 1980 to year 2009, they increased 50 trillion, 7 times. So Taiwan took this kind of opportunity to become a critical player. So think about that. The newcomers can learn the same way. It's almost impossible. So as a leading countries, not only Taiwan, like Japan, like Korea, we're good at mass production. We need to help them to reduce the cost and to improve that kind of things. But, you know, still, it's not happened within 5 to 10 years. It takes a longer way and a longer perspective to think about possibility for people can work together. So I'm not asking everything we keep in Taiwan. You know, Luis, year 2022, in Taiwan, total GDP, 38% about contributed by manufacturing industry. 38. That is a big number. But we need to think about how to, you know, spread it out to help Vietnam, to help Thailand, to build their own system. So I'm taking the weight. Well, I always encourage our government officials to open our door, to invite people to work with us together. Then we can meet your purpose. So that is what I can share with you.
Because in your books,
yes,
because I read lots of your books. Every year he wrote a book, and it's the first time in your books write down about the impact of the ICT industry will be the ESG or net zero issues.
Yeah, you are right.
Yeah.
The first time.
So DIGITIMES notice about the issue right now.
Absolutely. We need to think about that, and there is an obligation. There is a duty for us.
Okay.
Because I agree, climate change, we need to fit in, and we need to learn. And because I'm a guy, maybe you didn't know, I live in America 2 years. I live in Korea 2 years as well. So I speak Korean well. So that is very good for me to understand globally. And I travel to China, more than 100 major cities. And I've been to India 20 times. So I look around, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, different countries. So they all suffer from different way. And we are lucky. I'm not saying Taiwanese how great we are. I'm talking about we are lucky. And we learn the experience and we need to share with others. Don't talk too much about self-satisfaction. And we are okay. We are quite good.
Okay. Luis, what's your opinion about any kind of a cooperation between Taiwan and European Union? And I will also follow these questions because I found EGDC or GeSI have very close relationship with European Union. That's been the public and private partnership.
Yes.
And in Taiwan, it's not easy because even ICT industry, if they want to net zero, not the support by the government, it's impossible. Even the TSMC, they work very hard. It's impossible. But how can the government and the private sector work together for the net zero, for the transition, and what's the possibility of Taiwan and European Union? How can we work together?
Well, there are two dimensions here. One is the political dimension that I cannot answer for that.
Yeah.
But from let's say a business perspective, there is a lot of scope for cooperation. And so talking from an ICT perspective or the perspective of the digital world, organizations like GeSI, we can facilitate that dialogue. And that's also the reason why I've been here a couple of times, and also when you invited me to come I thought it was also a good opportunity to try to understand what kind of opportunities do we have to cooperate together. I give you an example. I had a meeting this morning with Tima, and Tima wants to be a GeSI member. They see a lot of good things that we do that can be passed on to their membership. And that's a way of collaboration. So we can bridge that, well, we can pass on that information that we have gathered for many years. Because while you are very advanced from an industrial perspective, from the ESG perspective, we are more advanced. So we need to bridge these two things. And that needs to be done through dialogue, through the organizations that we have in place, and be ready to cooperate with each other in the best way possible. And that's why I spoke with Tima this morning as well, that most likely we will open a delegation here of GeSI, and we will start to provide some of our knowledge base to help companies in Taiwan to advance their ESG component. So that's one area. When it comes to public-private partnerships, I think they are fundamental. They are fundamental. Because if you have the public sector and the private sector back to back, it will be very complicated to respond to the challenges that we are having. So the private sector, by definition, we are normally very dynamic. We do things, we make things progress. We have their own business models, and we want to advance things. Sometimes what we do as private sector creates a problem for the policy side. And you can only overcome the problem if you open doors, if you open dialogues. And that's why in GeSI, I think we are experts on that, actually. So we have a partnership with the European Commission. We have a partnership with the United Nations. So we have 3 United Nations organizations that partner with GeSI: the ITU, UNEP, and the Climate Secretariat. And so we bring inside them the digital perspective. We tell them, for instance, in the climate conference in Dubai, for the first time, we brought the digital dimension into climate. So if you go to climate conferences, you talk about energy consumption. But energy is the problem side. Digital is the solution side. You cannot overcome the problem without a solution. You need solutions for climate. You know, we have a problem. So if you have a problem in your life, you need to find a solution for your problem. That approach does not exist in the climate conversations. They talk about the fossil fuels, the energy consumption. You know, it's all okay. And they talk about the solutions from the energy perspective, but they do not think outside of the box how other industry sectors can help them to accelerate. And digital is the only sector that can do that. And so that's why we signed an agreement with the Climate Secretariat now. And again, the public-private partnership. And so GeSI is now in 3 dimensions. We are at COP, we are at the European Union, and we are part of the transatlantic agreement between the Europe and the United States. So we are in these 3 big fora to bring the perspective of the digital world to address the most pressing sustainability challenges that we are facing. So my recommendation is really for the private sector to open these bridges, these dialogues with the public sector. Because the public sector, I don't know here in Taiwan, but if I look at Europe and European countries, the policymakers, by definition, they think short time. Because they are elected, they know I will stay here 2 or 3 years, and they do not worry about the future. In our case, the future is fundamental. We need to ensure the sustainability of business. And to ensure that, you need to knock on their doors and change their minds. And so I would recommend that approach, not only from a country perspective, but also from a global perspective, because, you know, those partnerships, we live in a global world. And so we know that now, because of the conflict that we have between Russia and Ukraine, that of course countries are closing again borders and so on. We are having more or facing more difficulties, but we need to go back to this open environment whereby we can talk with each other, we can act with each other, because if we don't do it, the problem will be bigger. We will not be able to tackle the challenge that we are facing.
So even the private sector government official, about the time, sometimes the government official is a very short term, private sector is longer.
Yes.
So it's a kind of problem which was
even
in Europe.
Exactly. And the thing is, the war is a huge problem. But I used to say that the climate challenge that we have is an atomic bomb. You know, is a tool of mass destruction. So what is happening with climate? So every year we lose billions of euros in climate impacts. Billions. And you know, we're losing more with climate than with the war destruction. So we need to address that. You know, you look at a country like Japan, the climate impacts they have, it's billions of yens that they lose. Now, companies like NEC, for instance, they are usually investing on climate adaptation technologies to monitor, you know, what's going on, and I think other countries are doing the same thing. So we cannot lose sight of that as well. So climate is the fundamental threat that we are facing, and technology is the fundamental solution to address that. And so betting on ICT, you know, having companies like the TSMC and others, it's right. You know, in GeSI we promote the role of digital for good, and you spoke about the two dimensions. So you mentioned that the TSMC is challenged by the ESG component, but the problem is the E. But the S and the G are very important as well, because those solutions that in technology that are developed are the ones that are providing the good side of the equation that allows for people to be connected, to use technology for good, to have you know, better infrastructure, better mobility, better health services, and so on and so on and so on. And so those dimensions, and that's what we have in digital repurpose, because ESG frameworks, they are all driven by the problem side. In digital repurpose, we say, okay, we have a problem, but we also have the solution, and the two things, they need to be complementary.
Yes.
Yes,
I agree.
Yeah, Colley, because in your books you talk about something about the TSMC. However, you know, we all know that Taiwan is a very special political situations. So all of the situation, our industry, especially the semiconductor industry, they should have their own. They should go there by their way. Sometimes they cannot get the support from the government. Sometimes, and they should have some resilience for themselves. So, and when we on the way of the net zero, I know that's all the big boss. Tell you the truth, they think the road for the government official is not clear. But for the ICT industry, they are very clear. They have their own way. And even the same question to Luis, how can we make the PPP better than before? Because right now, you know, some company complain about the system. They should, you should not pay so expensive carbon fee. You should lower down. TSMC, they earn a lot of money, so it's unfair. So such this kind of thing happened recently in Taiwan. So what's your suggestion?
You know, firstly, I would like to reply. Luis, you mentioned two things that is important for us to think about. First one is fundamental. We need to think about what is fundamental issues for us. Secondly, out of box. And I've read a book about the platform economy. The book mentioned, they have one sentence very impressed me. Media defines community. So we cannot enforce our government officials to read all articles because they take a long time to understand what is ESG, what is something like that. But once they have intention to know, we need to provide them the information. So you need to go through media to convince the community to understand what is ESG, not to talk to everyone. It means nothing, meaningless. So we need to identify the first community who could be the most important community for us to understand ESG. So that's what I suggest to you. And out of box. And if we need to charge people to read our articles or don't, or mixed, we need to provide a dual track for people to access the information by them. Maybe you go through the payment system, but ask them to read it in the same time, free. They may attract more people to understand what is ESG because mostly they're from industry perspective. So we need to think about how to build an information system to convince people to understand. That's what I suggest to. And just like government, don't expect government can do that kind of things because, every country, they have different situations. Last year when I went Singapore, I went India and I go through Singapore. And I pay visit to Singaporean government who in charge to invite semiconductor company to invest in Singapore. And after his introduction, I give him a comment on how we are different. And I say, Singapore approach is outside in. Our approach is inside out. Totally different. He asked me, he watched me and say, what's different? I say, Taiwan is a country because originally we have semiconductor. So every investment need to go through government official procedures. Then there is the inside out because people say we don't want to pay the cost. And the government need to solve the problem for us because government obligation is infrastructure. You don't provide us a good electricity, water, or infrastructure manpower, then you are not good government. So there is an obligation, duty of government. But once Singapore don't have the semiconductor, and once they want to invite outsider to his country, and there's an outside-in approach. So they say, yes, you need to pay 10 billion US dollars tax. Okay, once you want to come here, you just only need to pay 50%. Then attract people to come to Singapore. But our problem is who creates the most cost for the planet. That's the challenge for. Every country can satisfy themselves to attract outsiders who invest their country, even they don't have water, they don't have electricity. They say we have market. It doesn't make sense. So I suggest personally. So even we talk to government, we let them know we have the obligation to optimize everything together. That is the best, very original, fundamental. You mentioned about how to solve the problem. Otherwise, Russia wants semiconductor, right? China wants semiconductor, but they subsidize, and you pay higher cost for the planet. So it doesn't make sense for us. So I agree with you to think about fundamental issues for everyone, not only for Taiwan or even for your organization. So I try to convince government to understand that, but it takes a longer time. And the best way is naturally they understand and accept it, not enforce or give them speech, then ask them to listen to. That is difficult. So we can try different way to help them. So I would suggest, yes, last time I discussed with Mr. Pan, maybe we can work together. Like we organize a special channel for ESG. We don't have an ESG channel. Then the better way, because we have a lot of pay members. They pay already. So if they can get access to the information and you can get a good community, they really influence the whole society. Then it's better for your purpose, your mission to build this company. So that's what I suggest to you.
Yes, wonderful. So my last question to Luis is about, you mentioned about EGDC, you have some methodology to measure the net zero, net positive impact of digital technology. I remember you talk about you will be use European tax money. Yeah, tax money. EU tax money is very important because it impacts everything. In Taiwan, when we talk about EU tax money, and everybody say, okay, nuclear is clean energy, but it's wrong. It's by the definition of EU tax money. And I'm wondering, I will not talk about nuclear. It's another issue. I want to talk about any kind of progress right now, and what's the motivation during that time? Because that such kind of issue is very important to us, especially the Taiwan Climate Partnership. And that's why we want to work with you, follow your process.
Okay, well, I think the motivation is twofold. One is we see many companies claiming that, by the way, today, that there is this discussion about greenwashing. So companies are claiming that they have green technologies. And we saw a moment in Europe that everybody was saying, my technology is green. But no one was able to measure that. So, and so the motivation of GDC and what is behind all of that is really to provide a framework that anyone can use the same methodology and compare apples with apples and pears with pears. And that was a long process. So we had along with the members and the partners and so on, we have maybe over 100 people working with us in developing the methodology. We had a sounding board of experts, so external experts, independent experts, to validate the results. There were very hot conversations between the experts and the companies, because the companies, companies were saying, no, my infrastructure is green. Yeah, but how do you prove that your infrastructure is green? So we need to understand. And so those dialogues took place. And after 2 years of work, we came up with the methodology. We also defined the indicators for the taxonomy, and what is the motivation of the companies. Now the companies can claim financing at no cost. So the European Union in the Green Deal transition provided 700 billion euros for the twin transition in Europe. That money is available. But for any company to claim the money at no cost, they need to invest on green. And to invest on green, they need to prove that what they're doing is green. And so what we are providing to the European Commission is the methodology that will go into the taxonomy, European taxonomy. The benefit of that is that now companies can claim access to the European Green Fund, the 700 billion euros, and they can invest that money in future green technologies and so on. Which, by the way, they might have been requested to do, but they had to go to the, get financing from, other financial institutions at the cost. So here is money, what they say, for free. And part of that money, by the way, you part of it, I don't know the percentage, but part of it you don't give it back. So the companies only pay, 70%, and the 30% is paid by the company. So, which is a huge benefit. And so this was the overall motivation. I think we came to the point now that we have the methodology. I think this will be probably a global standard. We are now discussing with global financial institutions like the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, regional banks, to apply this methodology in their investment decisions. And we are going on the second phase of the GDC now, which is about implementation of the methodology, because we developed a very nice product, but now we need to test it. We need to do the road testing and eventually refine it. But we have now at least something that can be applied for every single vertical sector. We work with all the sectors, with energy, with agriculture, with mobility, and so on. And so now every single sector has a tool that they can use. They can use the financing process. And so this is the overall benefit of GDC. And again, a good example of a public-private partnership, which is really driving a better world, I might say so, because companies now they can show what they do. It's not only about throwing out a solution and say, well, this iPad is green, but is green why? So we need to understand how it was built, what is the overall footprint of the iPad, but also the iPad as a service provides a benefit. So what is the benefit? So we measure all of that. And I think we came to a very good point. It's a good example. And I don't think the taxonomy, in this case, will be a burden. I think it's part of the solution to drive better investment in green technologies in the future.
Some of our ICT, TCP, Taiwan Climate Partnership members also notice what you are doing right now. And so I'm wondering, because in Taiwan we have a very mature ICT supply chain, such as kind of EU taxonomy also important for the future for us. So can we join or can we follow your tracks? Yeah,
you can join GDC. So there are two possibilities. For instance, an organization like TCP, you can be a partner. That means the learnings, you can then bring them to Taiwan or to the business in Taiwan. Any company in Taiwan can join. I give it a TSMC. If they want to be a member, they can be a member, but then the CEO needs to sign those principles.
But 2040, net zero. It should be the criteria. 2040 net zero. It's a big burden.
but we need to think in two ways. And you might not agree with me, but this is my experience in my business life. You know, because I've been working, I'm a businessman. So I work for telecommunications all my life. And when I was leading the Deutsche Telekom Sustainability Department, my CEO didn't believe on climate change. And I was the climate protection officer of the company. So he would not be interested in anything around climate change. But it was my responsibility to drive climate change. So I give you an example. We have in our company a 20% reduction target at that time. And I was looking at that figure, and that figure never told me anything. I said, what does that mean, 20% reduction target? And then I said, no, we need to change. So what I did, instead of a 20% reduction target, I put in every single part of the company a 20% energy efficiency target. So every single sector needed to reduce 20% of the energy consumption. The network infrastructure, IT, buildings, fleet services, data centers, and so on. And the target I had, in most of the cases, with the exception of the infrastructure, was reached within 3 years. And the benefit of that, it was, I achieved the target. The 20% of energy consumption, actually, it was more than 20% than the carbon emissions, because it was dependent on the emission factor of each country. But the benefit was I reduced 100 million euros in energy costs. And then I brought the number to my CEO, and I told him, well, the money that you're paying for my department, actually, it was peanuts compared with the benefit that I had. And you know, we need to be bold in our approach.
Yes.
Because if you think, well, 2040, well, that's a problem, and then your head goes around the problem, does not go around the solution. You need to be bold. You need to be visionary. You need to think about, what can I do to achieve that? You know, many companies set up targets. So I give you another example. Every single climate conference, you have hundreds, thousands of companies announcing their climate targets. Tell me one that has achieved those targets. After the climate conference, all that conversation is forgotten. So I tell the GeSI members, I don't want you to tell me your climate target. I want to tell me how much are you reducing energy over year over year. That's the point, because if you reduce energy, you reduce your cost base. You are becoming more efficient. You are reducing your costs. You're providing a service to a benefit to the company, a benefit to the planet at the same time. That's the mindset. And then you can control over time. But if you say, okay, by 2030, I will be 20% less or 30% less, who's looking at that? No one. That is not taking us anywhere. So you need the metrics. That again, I'm coming back to digital repurpose. That's why we put the metrics on digital repurpose. Tell me your scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. Next year, are you better on scope 1, scope 2, scope 3? And next year, if after 3 years you're not good. Go elsewhere, because you are not a digital repurpose company. So this needs to be a brand at the end of the day. But the brand is about generating value for the companies. And that's where I think that we need to go. So don't be worried about the 2040. I don't think, I tell you, I give you another example, which is an example from a company. Verizon.
Oh, Verizon. Yeah.
Big company, huge, a couple of years back, they are GeSI member, board member, chairman of GeSI. Jim Gowan, the chief procurement officer, is the man that is buying, he's coming here many times. And a couple of years back, when he came to become GeSI chairman, I told him, Jim, you are now GeSI chairman, you need to walk the talk. And he told me, Luis, this is a problem. Maybe you need to cut this part of our, this is a problem. I told him, Jim, think bold, think ahead. And Verizon today is one of the best companies on climate change in the United States. They issued the 6th bond, 1 billion bond. So every year they are issuing a green bond, 1 billion. All that money comes to invest on green infrastructure, on green technologies, and so on. It's amazing. And when we started, it was a problem. And I told him, look, you need to think about the solution. And so this is the approach. Many people, many companies look at climate change as a problem. Well, it's a problem in itself. We are facing a problem. But to respond to the problem, we need to think about what is the solution. Every single one, including us as individuals. So tomorrow I will be talking about sustainable living at the conference. We as individuals, we need to walk the talk. We need to be different. We need to become more efficient. We need to give the example. And with all of this, these building blocks, we will start to build a better world for everybody.
So, Colley, you know very detailed about the big boss of the ICT industry, and they are quite successful in the last 30 to 50 years. And however, right now, net zero burden is 2050, but right now, probably 2040, 10 years is cost a lot of money. And also, in your books also mentioned the US-China technology war, something. So it's a kind of the complicated compared to the future success. So what's your think about the future development?
I never worry about our industry leaders' perspective about ESG.
Yeah.
Because we are experienced people. Speak frankly, most of the first generation industry leaders, they work in the industry longer than 30, 40 years. They know how to make decisions. Once I read a book called Hidden Champion. Hidden champion means most of the companies, hidden champion companies, they derive from Germany-based company. Then in Asia, Taiwan is the highest ratio compared with any other countries. And what means for hidden champion? You need to know more things than your customers. Otherwise, you cannot be a hidden champion. And Taiwan, as I mentioned, Taiwan is a harmless country. We always produce for other companies. But I would suggest, Luis, you should come to Taiwan more often. You know why? I mentioned about semiconductor, only semiconductor. In case of the brand name, with the brand to the market, America is highest market share. Taiwan is about 8% only last year. But in case of industrial-wise, we have 18% market share worldwide. And especially most of the advanced chips actually produced by Taiwanese makers. We know how to serve our customers. If customers say we need to consider the factors like ESG, we need to follow. And we know how to follow. Don't worry about us. But take different way to think about why you should come here more often. Because, as I mentioned, in case of a semiconductor or a supply chain, Asia supply chain is most important and most critical. And you may didn't know, Taiwan at least share half of the whole Asia supply chain. Taiwan government asks every district company, they need to deliver their financial reports monthly basis. So we know every company's status. That is quite clear. And only, as I mentioned, only last year, the total industry revenue as big as very close to $1 trillion. That is a big deal. And let me explain to you what I'm thinking about. The first one, what means for national power? In case of the traditional way, we think about the population. We think of the manpower, dimension, length, people, or even participation of international organization. You are good, but Taiwan cannot participate in a general way. But take different way to think about the digital power about a country. And as I mentioned, we produce a lot of ICT products. We create problems, as you say, but we also have the similar or good solutions or part of the solution to help to solve the problem together. That's why I say you should come here more often. Maybe I can invite you to our big events as a keynote speaker to introduce your ESG policy. At least 500 people, I promise you. So that's one thing. Thirdly, to consider future, you mentioned about 10 years, 15 years later. So it's about equal economy, national power. So we need to think about the future. And today, I'm not sure, Dr. Penn, you knew that or not. the top nine big companies to do mass production in Taiwan, like Delta, like Lighton Tech, you know, how big is the Foxconn Group, their revenue?
Foxconn, I do not know, but I visit them, so it's huge.
No problem. You're not in the field. We are in the production. So, you know, only last year, $220 billion about. It's a very big deal. The biggest company in the world to do mass production. So we need to convince them to follow the steps. They also like to follow. So there is a future power. But imagine the top 9 big giants of Taiwan high-tech industry. Now their gross margin keep very healthy, better than last year. So there's a good timing to convince them to invest. They're eager, they like to invest, but we don't have the methodology. Just like our government say, yes, and we have the rule, you just follow. But speak frankly, DIGITIMES is DIGITIMES a high-tech company? No. We are a high-tech company because we serve them. They buy a lot of, you know, they buy services from us. Then we need to take a leading position to convince them how to follow this kind of rule. But in case of the energy consumption, my company is very small. We only have 250 people work with me. So consumption is not a challenge for us. But in case of the TSMC, we are totally different. In case of the 9 different blocks, and TSMC, they have the highest revenue, they have highest profit, and they consume the highest electricity, power, and water. So their rule must be different from us. We are in the high-tech field. Without high-tech company, we cannot survive. So we are high-tech company, part of high-tech industry, because, you know, otherwise, industry leader don't invest in my company. So we take this kind of way to work together, but we need better rules or framework to understand how we can invest. Otherwise, if my company to invest too much to write article document for you, no, it doesn't make any sense. If even we go public, it's waste, right? So we have the better methodology to help TSMC, UMC to build their own methodology to think about the future. So please come here more often, and we need the better framework to follow up. So that's what I suggest.
By the way, I visited Foxconn just to measure many because I did audits at Foxconn. At that time, they had 1 million employees or something.
1.3.
Yeah.
But last month, I met Chairman Yang Liu. I asked him again, how many employees you have now? He said 800,000.
Because of
smart manufacturing.
Automation.
You know, I met the chairman of Wistron about 6 months ago, and he told me, year 2009, this company maybe have $15 billion, and they have 150,000 workers work with them. But now they have bigger than $30 billion, double. But the manpower down to 90,000. So because smart manufacturing, and we reduce the cost to use our energy to solve the similar problem. So we know how to follow up. So we are very good. And speak frankly, as I mentioned, from year 1980 to year 2009 was the best period to learn mass production, because the scale, what called standard products, PC, mobile phone. Now products is not standard. So it's very difficult to catch up. And secondly, most of the emerging countries, they lack of the infrastructure. What means for infrastructure? Like transportation, like warehousing, they need smart applications. So even companies like ARM, they emphasize one thing: application-driven economy is happening. Then we need to take a way to think about bottom-up approach, not only top-down. So two sides, two ways work together, and we can help you to solve the problem. And that is our common purpose, and we can work together in the future.
Yeah, so I think this talk, we found lots of the opportunities to work together in the future, especially the Taiwan ICT supply chain, working with the EGDC, GeSI together. I think lots of opportunity. Also the DIGITIMES.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you all,
Oh,
two
thank
gentlemen.
No, thank you so much.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.